Imagine this. A small town asleep under a blanket of mist. The streetlights hum gently, their glow swallowed by a thick, unnatural fog. The air is cold but still, unnervingly still. Then suddenly, something shifts. Not above, but below. The earth vibrates, not with violence, but with rhythm. A hum. A whisper. Not heard through the ears, but felt through the chest, through the teeth, through the very bones. Dogs howl. Car alarms trip in unison. Somewhere in the woods, an entire flock of birds takes flight in the dead of night, scattering into a black sky like ash in a storm. The next morning, no one can agree on what happened. But no one sleeps the same again. Don't forget to like and share this story with your friends or closest family members to help spread awareness and caution through storytelling. It began in early December 2003, in the quiet town of Wokingham, nestled deep in the Berkshire countryside. People there didn't lock their doors at night. Crime was low. The most excitement anyone had seen in years was a surprise snowstorm in '98. But that calm was about to break. It started small, barely noticeable. A handful of reports, a low hum during the night, an uneasy feeling, an ache behind the eyes. Some dismissed it as seasonal headaches or stress from the coming holidays. But the reports kept coming. In 1 week alone, 13 households in the Joel Park area filed complaints about an unnatural vibration that woke them up between 2 and 4 in the morning. No tremors were recorded. No machines or construction could be traced. At first, no one connected the dots. Angela Kemp, a night nurse at the nearby care home, was the first to document the phenomenon publicly. She kept a journal, more out of habit than paranoia. Her first entry read, December 4th, woke up around 3:12 a.m. The flat was shaking. Not like an earthquake, too soft. More like a heartbeat. Even the cups in the cabinet buzzed. Her neighbors called her dramatic. Her colleagues smiled politely. But Angela persisted. Over the next 3 nights, she recorded the same sensation, always between 3 o'clock and 3:30 a.m. By December 12th, 29 similar accounts had surfaced, most within a 1-kilometer radius of Joel Park. Then came the first malfunction. At Finchampstead petrol station, every digital pump crashed at once, 3:17 a.m. CCTV footage from that night, later leaked online, shows something even more disturbing. The video warps subtly, as if the very pixels themselves are vibrating. Then, for 6 seconds, it cuts to static. It returns, only to reveal a blur at pump 5. The frame shakes slightly, even though the camera is mounted to concrete. Timecode resets to 0000:00:00, then flickers back. The incident was dismissed as a software fault. But not everyone bought the explanation. Isaac Mallory, a retired physics lecturer living near the park, began his own investigation. He mapped each report onto a satellite image. They formed a ring. A precise, circular pattern, about 400 meters in diameter, centered exactly on the wooded edge of Joel Park. Something was radiating outward. The hum, the power surges, even the strange behavior in local animals. Foxes seen pacing in tight circles, cats vanishing entirely for days, all seemed to begin and end in the same place. And then, on the night of December 17th, something new happened. Angela woke again at 3:09 a.m. But this time, the air felt heavy. She described it later as trying to breathe underwater. Her windows were rattling, but no wind. The flat buzzed like it was alive. When she opened the curtain, she saw something. Not a light. Not a shape. A rippling effect in the air. Like heat above tarmac, but vertical, like a tall pillar of invisible waves, just outside the park boundary. It stood there, silent, shivering in place. Then it was gone. Angela collapsed. Her nose bled for 27 minutes. She was hospitalized for acute vertigo and high-frequency hearing loss. Doctors said it was a stress episode. But Isaac knew better. He returned to the park the following night with a homemade EMF reader and an analog tape recorder. He placed the equipment at 3 different points along the park's edge. At precisely 3:15 a.m., the tape hissed. Not a sound. A tone. A rising signal, barely audible, until the recorder clicked off by itself. The next morning, one of the trees closest to the edge, the same one Angela had seen the shimmering near, had split at the trunk. From the inside. Local authorities said it was frost damage. But Isaac would later describe what he saw in his notebook. The core was rotted, but not natural. It looked burnt, but no fire. Bark warped, rings twisted, as if the tree had been spun from the inside out. He wasn't the only one who noticed. Children in the nearby school began to complain of hearing things during recess. Buzzing. High-pitched tones. A few drew pictures of black towers and melting trees during art class. By Christmas, more than 70 people had reported symptoms. Still, no one came to investigate. Not the town council. Not the Environment Agency. And so, Wokingham remained quiet. On the surface. Because beneath it, something had begun to stir. The strange hums stopped for 9 days. It was as if the earth itself had exhaled and gone still again. Some residents dared to hope it was over, that whatever had been lurking below the surface of their peaceful town had passed. They couldn't have been more wrong. In early January, just after New Year's Eve, children playing in the frost-covered fields north of Joel Park stumbled across something odd, a circle in the grass. Not a crop circle, not burnt or carved, just flattened. 12 meters wide. The grass inside bent precisely in a spiral pattern. The center pressed to the soil like the eye of a storm. The blades weren't broken, only curved, as if pressed by an invisible force. The parents called it a prank. The children called it a secret. Within a week, 3 more circles appeared, each larger than the last. All in isolated patches near the Wokingham cricket ground and Cantley fields. All without footprints, without damage to fences, with no signs of how anything or anyone could have reached them unnoticed in the night. That week, Angela Kemp was discharged from hospital. But something had changed. She was quieter, distracted. She kept a small pocket recorder in her coat at all times and refused to take public transport. She told her neighbors she could still hear it, the whisper, not in her ears, but in the pressure behind them, like static lodged in her skull. She returned to work on January 10th. That same night, her recorder captured something impossible. A tone, 12 seconds long, descending in frequency like a reversed siren. Then, 3 clear, rhythmic clicks. Mechanical, artificial, deliberate. Isaac Mallory heard the tape. He took it straight to his former colleague, Professor Giles Redden, who had once taught theoretical acoustics at Reading University. Giles listened once. Then again. His expression didn't change until the 3rd playback. He turned the volume down, leaned in, and said, "That isn't natural. It's not even interference. That's a signal." Isaac asked him what kind. Giles shook his head. "Not any I've seen before. But it's structured. The clicks are spaced at a ratio of 3 to 5. That's not random. That's design." They decided not to go to the authorities. Not yet. Instead, Isaac reached out to a small online forum focused on infraacoustic anomalies, a niche group of amateur radio engineers and sound scientists who monitored low-frequency activity across Europe. One user responded immediately. His username was G Spectre, and he had data. He claimed that between December 15th and January 7th, several anomalous infrasound pulses were detected across Berkshire. At first, they were too low to register as signals, buried beneath background seismic noise. But then, 3 of them matched precisely with the exact timestamps of Angela's journal entries. That wasn't coincidence. He sent over a chart. The pulses formed a curve, a shallow arc, a trail. Something had moved, beneath the ground, below the range of hearing, but not beyond detection. And it was headed west. Angela, meanwhile, began sketching in her journal. Not words, shapes. Circles. Concentric rings. Odd, hexagonal lines that repeated over and over. On January 15th, she stopped showing up to work. Her flat was empty. The door locked from the inside. A neighbor said they saw her walking toward the fields at dawn with nothing but a scarf and a notebook in her hand. She never returned. Police searched for 2 days before calling it a likely suicide. But Isaac didn't believe it. She'd left her recorder behind. And her final entry had one word, written in a shaky hand on the last page of her journal. Below. 3 days later, a sudden sinkhole opened near the edge of Joel Park. 6 meters wide. 4 meters deep. It collapsed without warning. No rain, no erosion, no warning signs. The town council sealed it off with tape. They called it natural ground movement. But inside the hole, beneath the dirt, someone spotted something strange. A glint. Faint. Metallic. Hidden between the layers of clay and stone. One council worker described it as a smooth edge, curved, like glass, but not glass. Like a surface you could see your reflection in, even in the dark. It was gone the next morning. The hole had filled itself. Overnight. The council said it was groundwater. Saturated clay. But Isaac and Giles knew better. They returned the following evening with gear. They set up seismic microphones, battery-powered oscillators, analog recorders, all rigged with motion sensors to begin recording only when triggered by sound or vibration. Nothing happened the first night. Nothing on the second. But on the third night, January 19th, at 3:13 a.m., everything lit up. The sensors caught a pulse. Not a hum. Not a tone. A blast, ultra-low, wideband, pushing across the soil in every direction like a shockwave. For 4 seconds, it registered higher than any natural tremor in the region's history. But not a soul in town felt a thing. The trees near Joel Park twisted again. One sapling exploded at the base, splinters found 12 meters away. The only witness was a local delivery driver on his morning round, who claimed the sky above the park shimmered, like looking through heat waves, and he heard a deep thrum inside his steering wheel. Isaac and Giles now had proof. But no one wanted to see it. They tried submitting the data to a university lab in London. The email bounced back. The forum they used, gone. Deleted overnight. Giles' laptop crashed and never restarted. His backup drives were wiped. And then, he vanished. No message. No sign of struggle. Only his car, parked outside Cantley Woods, with the keys still in the ignition. Inside the glove box, a small scrap of paper. Not from here. Not made for us. It was sleeping. Wokingham's skies turned colder in February. By then, the town had returned to its routine. The council replaced the cracked pavement near Joel Park. The petrol station resumed full operation. And Angela Kemp's name had faded into whispers, nothing more than a quiet tragedy for those who still remembered. But beneath that ordinary surface, the echoes were still moving. Isaac Mallory was now alone. Giles was gone. Not missing, removed. Isaac was sure of it. His old friend was cautious, obsessive. He wouldn't vanish without a trace unless something silenced him. And what haunted Isaac more than the loss was the silence that followed. The pulses had stopped. There were no more hums. No more tremors. No signals, no shimmer in the air. Just quiet. Too quiet. It was as if the thing beneath the town had recoiled. Gone dormant again, but watching. Still, Isaac kept recording. He upgraded his setup, built a low-bandwidth acoustic chamber in the basement of his cottage using copper wiring, lead insulation, and a modified barometer designed to detect infrasonic flux. For 2 weeks, the readings remained still. Then came the storm. On February 14th, a freak thunderstorm struck the area. It wasn't forecasted. It didn't move in from the west, like most weather systems. It formed directly above Wokingham, building fast, pressure rising violently in just 17 minutes. Lightning struck 12 times in under 90 seconds. 4 of those strikes hit exactly the same tree near Joel Park's boundary. Locals were frightened, but told themselves it was just nature. Isaac saw the readings. The storm's pressure build followed the same curve as the signal chart from December. He superimposed the data. It matched perfectly. The storm was not weather. It was a reaction. That night, his chamber recorded a sound unlike anything before. A repeating mechanical pulse. 3 seconds apart. Cold. Hollow. Like the sound of machinery buried beneath rock, running on a loop. It lasted 7 minutes and 34 seconds. At the end of the recording, a deep clang, sharp, metallic, like a door slamming shut from inside the ground. Isaac played it back 12 times. There was something else layered underneath. Not a hum. Not static. Not even a voice. But structure. He brought the audio to an old university contact, Dr. Lena, a linguist and mathematician who specialized in pattern recognition. She ran it through a harmonic map. The results made her visibly pale. It's not language. Not as we know it. But it's a recursive system. Whatever made this is thinking in loops. Like it's running through a sequence. Repeating something, checking its own process. That's not a sound, it's an engine. An echo engine. Lena coined the name by accident, but it stuck. The echo engine. She and Isaac began to dig deeper, into old town records, geological surveys, even wartime archives. What they found disturbed them both. Back in 1944, during the height of the Second World War, Wokingham had been considered as a site for a hidden command shelter. Blueprints existed showing a proposal for a deep-level military installation, codenamed Furnace Gate. The plan was rejected. Officially, the area was too unstable geologically. But some notes in the margins told a different story. Handwritten annotations in red ink. Acoustic anomalies below 30 meters. System resonance not understood. Recommend sealing cavity. There had been something down there. Even in the 40s. They checked more recent documents. In 1986, an unnamed energy firm conducted an unauthorized bore test near Cantley. The report was incomplete, but the cover sheet was dated only 3 days before the sudden death of one of the contractors, who had reportedly collapsed without cause during a routine site scan. His name was Bernard Heath. Angela had drawn a spiral identical to the one in the firm's report. The same spiral appeared on a chalkboard in Giles' garage when Isaac broke in after the disappearance. And it wasn't just a shape. It was a coordinate. The center of the spiral pointed to a location, an overgrown path in the western edge of Cantley Woods, long since blocked off by thorns and fallen trees. It was known among the locals as the Hollow Way, a path that children were warned never to take. Isaac went there on February 21st. At 2:49 a.m., he crossed the barrier of branches. He brought only his recorder, a torch, and Lena's map. What he found was not a clearing, not a ruin, nothing visible. But the air changed. The pressure dropped suddenly, violently, like an elevator shaft opening beneath him. He felt a sound, not heard, not recorded, but felt, like a scream lodged inside the marrow. His vision blurred. His knees buckled. And then, it stopped. He stumbled backward. The ground had shifted, very slightly. His torch flickered, and for a brief instant he saw it. A curve. A thin, unnatural arc of metal, barely visible beneath the moss-covered soil. Black. Seamless. Not rusted. Not aged. Not touched by time. Isaac dropped to his knees. His hands trembled. He reached out and touched it. It was warm. And the moment his skin met the surface, every bird in the forest went silent. No hum. No wind. Only the sound of his own breath. Then, beneath his feet, the earth clicked. Imagine a silence so complete, it presses against your skull like water closing in over your head. Imagine touching something buried for centuries, only to find it's warmer than your hand. Imagine the forest watching you, not with eyes, but with an awareness, ancient and quiet and infinitely patient. That's what Isaac Mallory felt in the moments after he touched the curve. He should have backed away. He didn't. Instead, he placed his ear to the soil, just above the metal arc, and listened. No birds. No wind. No rustle of life. Only a sound, not loud, but constant. Not mechanical. Not electric. It was a heartbeat. Slow. Deep. As if something vast and dormant was stirring beneath the crust of the earth. Isaac stumbled home just before dawn, drenched in sweat though the air was below freezing. His fingertips had gone numb. Not from cold, but from something else. 3 hours afterward, they glowed faintly under UV light. Lena saw it herself. And then the changes began. Isaac started waking at 3:13 every night, on the minute. Not from dreams. From silence. The same, pressurized silence he'd felt in the woods. He described it as sound trying to happen. Lena took samples of the soil from the hollow way. She expected to find high iron content or trace metals. Instead, she found carbon lattice patterns, artificial nanostructures embedded in the earth. Something non-organic, non-industrial, and unknown to material science. The lab ran it twice. Then a third time. One email arrived. Then no more. The lab deleted the results. Lena's access was revoked. That same week, 10 square kilometers of broadband interference suddenly spread across Wokingham. Mobile signals dropped. Radios glitched. Wireless cameras at the petrol station near Joel Park went black from 3:12 to 3:15 a.m. every night for 3 nights straight. Nobody could explain it. But Isaac had begun writing. Not consciously. He would black out for minutes at a time and find pages scribbled in ink on his wall, spirals and sequences and strange, mirrored runes. Lena scanned them. One matched a sequence from the WOW signal of 1977, a notorious deep space radio burst that lasted 72 seconds and was never heard again. Another matched a visual sonar pattern used in early nuclear submersible testing. A third matched no known symbol system on Earth. When they overlapped the sequences, the points aligned across a map of the local aquifer system. They traced a path, a vein beneath the ground. Like a tunnel. A tunnel with nodes. Nodes that pulsed. Every night, the hum returned, but only to Isaac. He began experiencing intense migraines, bleeding from the nose at precise intervals, always at 3:13 a.m. But what scared Lena most was what he began to say in his sleep. He would murmur words not in English, or in any human language. She recorded one such episode and ran it through a phonetic pattern identifier. The software refused to process it, flagged it as non-human input. But when slowed down 20 times, a strange pattern emerged. Every phrase ended with the same sound. A low, vibrating resonance, vocalized as if it came from inside a sealed chamber. Lena named the sound unit Phi. It did not match any animal, nor any machine. She took it to a bioacoustics specialist. He ran a comparison. His result. Whatever made this has lungs. Massive lungs. But no mouth. And no need to breathe often. You're dealing with something. Hibernating. Then he added, and you woke it. Meanwhile, government attention began to drift in. Quietly. A white van parked 2 streets down from Isaac's house for 3 days straight. No markings. No license plates. Lena was followed home twice. One night, her front door was found ajar, but nothing was missing. Nothing was moved. Except the notebook. Isaac's spiral journal was gone. No sign of break-in. No fingerprints. They moved fast. So did the next event. On March 4th, the River M began to reverse direction for 6 minutes. No rainfall. No flood. No explanation. Several fish were found dead on the banks, perfectly preserved, but with internal organs disintegrated, as if exposed to microwave bursts. The water level dropped 10 centimeters, then returned without overflow. That night, Isaac collapsed. His skin had turned pale. Not sick, drained. He whispered something as Lena found him unconscious. "We're just in its echo." When he awoke, he didn't remember speaking. But his heartbeat had changed. Lena recorded it. It no longer beat in a human rhythm. It pulsed every 3 seconds. Like the mechanical echo in the storm. Like the spiral's heartbeat. Lena ran one final scan. A geoacoustic pulse test centered on the hollow way. What returned was impossible. A spherical cavity, 400 meters below ground. Not a cave. Perfectly smooth. Roughly 2 kilometers wide. Hollow. Lined with something dense enough to block X-ray reflection. Inside, there was a shape. Not a structure. Not a tunnel. But an object. One that pulsed in sync with Isaac's heartbeat. She stared at the data and realized something terrifying. The object wasn't inactive. It wasn't buried. It was embedded. And Isaac was now a part of it. It began with dreams. Isaac Mallory no longer slept like other men. His nights weren't marked by rest or REM cycles, but by a drifting descent into something older than memory, something colder than the grave. Each time his eyes closed, he was pulled under, not just into visions, but into places. Structures that didn't obey gravity. Corridors lit by no source. Walls with memories, not materials. Lena documented everything. On March 6th, Isaac described standing in a vast, circular chamber. Its floor was a mirror, but not one that reflected. Instead, it showed him versions, himself older, younger, flickering between timelines that never existed. In every reflection, his veins glowed faintly with a dull copper light. That same night, Lena ran a live EEG on him. His brain activity dropped to a frequency she'd never seen before, 0.0003 Hz, a near-death pattern. But Isaac wasn't dying. He was stable. His body just wasn't there, as if part of his mind had been redirected. She called it the synthesis. A state between wakefulness and something, merged, integrated, networked. Whatever was underground, it was no longer just a presence. It was a system, and Isaac was being absorbed into it. Lena tried to warn the university. No one returned her calls. She contacted a private signal research group in Oslo. They intercepted a low-frequency pulse coming from Wokingham's coordinates. It pulsed once every 3.13 hours. The signal wasn't strong, but it shouldn't have existed. It wasn't part of Earth's natural Schumann resonance. But most disturbing was its echo time. The pulse bounced off the moon's surface and returned after 2.7 seconds. When the Oslo team checked again 12 hours later, the echo returned in 2.4 seconds. That meant something had changed the speed of return. The signal was being answered. By March 10th, Isaac had stopped speaking in full sentences. He spoke in intervals. Not random, sequenced. He would speak a line, wait 3 seconds, then another. When Lena analyzed the speech pattern, she noticed a terrifying overlay. The timestamps matched the pulsing nodes along the underground map they'd traced earlier. Isaac's speech wasn't random. He was relaying data, transmitting, not consciously, but biologically. His body was becoming a conduit. She injected him with a contrast dye and ran a 3D vascular scan. His veins had restructured, not biologically, geometrically. They formed a recursive pattern, a hexaspiral array, with each node echoing the positions of the tunnel structures below Wokingham. Isaac's circulatory system had become a map of the buried machine. He had become a key, and the system beneath was awakening. On March 12th, Lena returned to the hollow way. She brought a drone, equipped with infrared sensors and magnetometers. She launched it above the tree line. No interference at first. Then, at 3:13 a.m. sharp, all systems froze. The drone lost signal. Its rotors stalled mid-air. Then it dropped, hovering just above ground, as if suspended by something unseen. Lena didn't touch it. Instead, she stepped forward and placed her palm flat against the same patch of soil where Isaac had once knelt. She felt it instantly. A pull, not magnetic, not electric, but aware. The sensation of being read, scanned, memorized. And then her mind was filled with a single image. Not of a creature, not of a machine, but of a seed. She saw the cavity for what it was. Not a prison, a womb. The system beneath Wokingham wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even of war. It was a gestation engine. And Isaac was the first successful host. Lena ran. She packed what she could. She tried to extract Isaac. But he was gone. His body lay in bed, pale and unmoving, but alive. His heartbeat had slowed to 1 every 15 seconds. His eyes remained open, unblinking, focused on nothing. She whispered to him, shook him. He only said one thing. The root is in the blood. It remembers where it fell. On March 15th, all power in Wokingham flickered. A town-wide brownout lasting 11 seconds. Nothing major. Until cameras restarted and people reviewed the footage. Between frames, in multiple angles across the town, a dark triangular silhouette appeared briefly in the sky. It wasn't flying. It was hovering, perfectly still, above Joel Park. 3 corners. No lights. No engine. And at its center, one single red pulse. Timed precisely at 3.13 seconds between flashes. It was seen only for 4 frames. Then it vanished. Imagine a heartbeat that isn't yours. Imagine it echoing through your body, slow and cold, like a countdown inside your bones. Imagine knowing that something in the sky sees you. Not just your face, not just your flesh, but your history, your future, your use. That was the truth Wokingham faced. But they didn't know it yet. Only Lena Varys did. And she was running out of time. The triangular silhouette caught on camera spread quickly among local residents. Some dismissed it as drone interference. Others said it was a glitch. But a few older residents, those who remembered the 1978 blackout and the strange noise that followed it, had a different reaction. Fear. They called it the return. That night, Lena returned to the woods alone. Armed with a handheld echo pulse monitor, a flare, and a thermal scanner, she followed the spiral trail to the buried curve of metal. But the curve had changed. It was no longer just a sliver. The moss had burned away. The shape had grown, now visible across nearly 3 meters of soil, as if something beneath had shifted upward. Its surface was pulsing. Slowly. Red. A pulse every 3.13 seconds. Lena crouched low. Pressed the thermal scanner against the surface. It was over 41 degrees Celsius, abnormally warm for an object buried under Earth, untouched by sunlight. She activated the echo monitor. It screamed. Not in volume, but in complexity. The readings showed thousands of internal resonances, firing in patterns that didn't match any known mineral or mechanical system. It was like listening to an orchestra of machines, all playing different notes, all perfectly in sync. This wasn't just a structure. It was an interface. She whispered into the soil. "What are you?" The red pulse flickered. And then, impossibly, the pulse repeated in her chest. Her heart synced without warning. For 7 full seconds, Lena felt her heartbeat overridden, slowed to 3.13 seconds per beat, the same rhythm that haunted Isaac. She gasped, stumbled back, and vomited behind a tree. When she looked up, the triangle was above her. No sound. No descent. No wind. Just presence. The black triangle hovered 50 feet above the clearing. Its corners were matte black, sharp like obsidian, and impossible to focus on directly, as if light refused to settle on it. It blocked the stars. From the center, the red pulse continued. Then something dropped. Not from the sky. From inside the soil. The ground split silently, without quake or dust, revealing a shaft of pure black, a space that didn't reflect, didn't echo, didn't exist by normal physics. From it, a shape rose, humanoid but wrong, tall, thin, faceless. Its body looked like glass filled with ink that shifted inside it. Every few seconds, a red light blinked from where its chest might be, mirroring the triangle's pulse above. Lena froze. The figure didn't move toward her. Instead, it extended one hand. Its fingers were too long. Its palm glowed red. And then, it spoke. But not with words. With memory. Lena collapsed backward as visions flooded her. Isaac's first contact, the buried womb beneath the town, Giles's disappearance, Angela's drawing, the war-era documents, the pulse in the storm. And then, something else. Something not from Earth. A place beyond time. A chamber filled with a spiral of sleeping forms, each held in a web of red veins pulsing in silence. They were not dead. They were waiting. The figure stepped back into the dark shaft. The earth closed silently. The triangle vanished, not flying away, but folding in on itself like paper burning in reverse. And Lena was alone. Except now, she could feel it. The red pulse. Inside her. She ran to Isaac's house. He was sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the wall. His first words in 2 days. "It's through you now. They've moved to the second host." Lena froze. Her hands trembled. "I didn't agree to anything," she said. Isaac looked at her, calm. "Neither did I." The following morning, strange reports trickled in from around Wokingham. A bus driver along Denmark Street swore the traffic lights turned red every 3.13 seconds. A child woke screaming, drawing black spirals in red crayon. And the church bell at St. Paul's rang once at exactly 3:13 a.m., even though it hadn't been functional in over a year. And then came the siren. A deep, resonant tone that echoed across town for exactly 3 minutes and 13 seconds, at 3:13 a.m. on March 16th. It didn't come from any town system. No siren tower. No speakers. Just sound, broadcast from every direction at once. Windows shook. Dogs howled. And every person who'd had dreams since March first woke at the same moment, screaming the same phrase. "The seed is beneath us." That morning, Lena's blood sample changed. She no longer registered as O negative. Her blood type was now unreadable. And under magnification, her white cells were folding into spirals. The pulse wasn't just inside her. It was rewriting her. Imagine watching your own body turn against its design. Imagine blood that no longer obeys medicine, tissues that shift under microscopes as if they know they're being watched. Imagine realizing that what's inside you was never meant for you. That's what Lena Veres faced on the morning of March 17th. She sat in her lab, eyes hollow, staring at the screen that refused to make sense. Her blood no longer showed red under optical tests. It shimmered, subtly, like oil on water, or like the surface of something not yet fully formed. No one else saw it happen, but she knew. The rewrite had begun. She injected a small sample of her altered blood into a sterilized tissue culture. Within minutes, the cells began multiplying, not randomly, but with intention. They formed hexagonal patterns. Then spirals. Then clusters of symbols she had seen in Isaac's drawings. Each time she blinked, it felt like time had skipped. Like she had missed a frame of reality. Lena began documenting everything, speaking aloud into a recorder. This is no longer just infection. It's integration. There's intelligence in the transformation. The blood doesn't just carry data. It understands what it's becoming. That night, she attempted to extract a tissue sample from beneath her left forearm. But when the scalpel touched her skin, the blade melted. It didn't snap. It didn't cut. It liquefied at the edge and hissed as if dipped in acid. The skin underneath remained untouched. She didn't bleed. She laughed. Then cried. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the siren returned. But this time, only she could hear it. No town-wide alarm. No echo through the streets. It was inside her skull. She fell to her knees, clutching her head as the tone vibrated through her bones. Her vision darkened, not from pain, but from pull. She was being drawn inward again, to that same black space beneath the ground, that impossible cavity of smooth silence. This time, she wasn't alone. Dozens of figures surrounded her in the vision. Tall, fluid, spiraled with the same red light that pulsed through her veins. They didn't speak, but she understood. She was no longer outside the system. She was part of the gestation, a living relay, a carrier. The figure from the clearing appeared again, standing opposite her. This time, it reached out. Its hand didn't touch her, but passed through her. And when it did, she saw everything. The origin. The spiral wasn't alien. Not in the way humanity defined it. It was pre-Earth. A seed of something old, buried in silence before the first fossil, before the tectonic plates split. An intelligence that didn't arrive on a ship. It had waited. Lena saw the Earth as it once was, a soft, newborn crust, and beneath it, the black core of the spiral chamber, folding reality inwards like a heartbeat sealed in stone. The triangle wasn't a ship. It was a signal receiver, a geometric organ of a system that fed on resonance, not matter. The pulse wasn't broadcasting outward. It was waiting for recognition, waiting for someone to echo back. And Isaac was only the first. She snapped awake, drenched in sweat. Her heart raced, but the pulse was gone. She felt silence in her chest. For the first time in days. Isaac wasn't at home when she checked. Gone. But the walls were covered again, this time not with ink, but with a burn. The spirals were etched, melted into the drywall, smoking faintly. In the center, one phrase. Host unstable. Transferring to next viable node. Lena stared at her hands. She was the node now. And she knew what was coming next. At 3:13 p.m., a thunderclap split the sky above Wokingham. No clouds. No rain. No lightning. Just sound, high and sharp and layered with impossible tones. People dropped to their knees in shops, cafes, in traffic. Some bled from their noses. Others began humming, without meaning to. And in the sky, for exactly 3 minutes and 13 seconds, the black triangle reappeared. Hovering lower than before. Almost touching the trees of Joel Park. This time, it opened. From its center, a vertical slit formed, silent and slow. And from within, something stepped out. Not humanoid. Not like before. This shape was wrong. A mess of limbs that folded inward. Mouthless. Skin that shimmered between states. It stepped into the air, not falling, but descending as if the world beneath had changed rules. Children screamed. Phones died. Birds fell from the sky in a 6-block radius. Lena stood just beyond the park entrance. Her nose bled freely. Her heart no longer beat with human rhythm. She didn't run. She stepped forward. The figure saw her. Stopped. The pulse returned, slow and steady. But this time, it matched hers. And then the creature bowed. Imagine being saluted by something that has no name, no language, and no mercy. Imagine it recognizing you, not for who you are, but for what you've become. Imagine that your heartbeat is no longer yours, but part of a code, a system, an awakening. That's what Lena Verys saw in the eyes of the creature that bowed before her in Joel Park. The thing's form was not stable. It flickered between states. Bone to glass, smoke to sinew, all stitched together by that same dull red glow pulsing through the joints, across the skin, inside the eyes that weren't really eyes. Behind it, the black triangle hovered in total silence, not moving, not rotating. Just watching. Lena stepped closer. She wasn't afraid. Her fear had been replaced. Replaced with resonance. The creature turned. Not away, but toward something beneath the park. It knelt and placed one long arm on the grass. The ground responded. A circle of soil retracted, revealing a smooth, perfect opening, like an iris dilating, or a lens clicking into clarity. From below rose a monolith. Black. Cold. Not a statue. Not a machine. More like an interface, the same height as Lena, carved with thousands of impossible symbols, many of which now mirrored patterns within her own skin. Her veins glowed faintly in the late afternoon light, pulsing in tandem with the red core of the object. And then it began to speak. But not in sound. It spoke in memory. Lena's mind flooded with an image. A chamber, not below the earth, but inside it, suspended in a vacuum pocket surrounded by magnetic nothingness. There, a spiral of structures hummed in silence, identical to what Lena had seen in the field. Each one held a host. Each host, sleeping, connected by thin, translucent cords that pulsed red with every 3.13-second beat. And then she saw herself, the last unfilled node in the spiral. Until now, back in the real world, the creature gestured toward the monolith. It expected her to touch it. Lena hesitated. Then she remembered Isaac. His eyes. His voice. His warning. The root is in the blood. She pressed her palm against the monolith. Instantly, the air around her folded inward. The sky darkened, not from cloud, but from color itself bleeding out. Time felt liquid. The grass under her feet grew and shrank in seconds. The air turned electric. People screamed in the distance, muffled, like echoes through static. Then everything stopped. Silence. She was standing somewhere else. The chamber. It was real. Massive. Geometric. Suspended in darkness without gravity. She hovered in the center, surrounded by 27 host forms locked in spirals, each cocooned in a column of red light. They weren't all human. Some had longer limbs. Some lacked symmetry. One had no mouth, just a vertical slit across its head that flickered with soundless pulses. And still, every 3.13 seconds, the whole structure breathed. In, out, together. A living system. Lena heard something behind her. Turning, she saw a being unlike the others. Larger. Its body was layered in sharp plates of obsidian black material, its form crystalline and terrifyingly elegant. It didn't move. It only observed. Then, it spoke. Not in memory this time. In pure code. A series of pulses. Geometric patterns. Echoes that shaped meaning. Protocol 3.13 confirmed. System host achieved. Spiral progression enabled. Lena felt something deep in her chest unlock. Not metaphorically. Physically. Her spine pulsed. Her skull shivered. The tips of her fingers tingled with magnetism. And she knew what she was now. She was the keystone. The last piece. The thing that would allow the entire system to wake. She opened her eyes. She was back in Joel Park. The triangle was still above. The monolith had retracted. The creature was gone. And the sky was no longer the right color. It had shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, but the blue was thinner, stretched, as if something massive was pushing just beyond the clouds. People were emerging from buildings. Some still dazed. But others were like Lena. Their eyes glowed faintly red. They walked toward the center of the park in silence. Each heartbeat synced. Each breath timed. Each soul rewritten. From the edge of town, the black triangle pulsed once more. And then, slowly, it began to duplicate. 2 triangles. Then 3. Then 7. They didn't fly. They phased into position. Above every town in a perfect circle around Wokingham. A spiral formation, spanning 30 kilometers. And at the center, Lena stood. Arms raised. Blood shimmering. The keystone had awoken. Imagine the sky becoming an eye. Imagine your hometown at the center of its gaze. Imagine that everything you once thought was beneath your feet, Your home, your soil, your history, was never yours to begin with. It belonged to something else. Something patient. And now, it was ready to rise. That's what the people of Wokingham faced as March 18th began. 7 triangles hung motionless in the sky, forming a perfect spiral across the Berkshire countryside. No military aircraft approached. No official statements were issued. All national broadcasts abruptly ended at 3:13 a.m. They were replaced by silence. And then the tone returned. But this time, it wasn't just a hum. It was a frequency that rewrote memory. Those closest to the triangle formations, villages like Wooshill, Embrook, and Arborfield, began reporting impossible phenomena. A clock slowed. A water bent upward. A trees leaned toward the sky with branches twisting into loops. Some heard their own names whispered from empty corners of rooms. In Wokingham town center, Lena stood in the middle of Marketplace. Her skin was pale, her pupils faintly red, but her voice was clear. She began speaking aloud in a language no one recognized, but everyone understood. Those who listened too long found their thoughts interrupted by flashes of impossible places. Empty cities made of bone, machines the size of planets, and oceans filled with shapes that mirrored their dreams. By sunrise, 13 people had vanished. Each last seen standing in front of reflective surfaces, mirrors, puddles, black glass, before they simply were no longer there. Lena called it the first spiral. It was not destruction. It was alignment. She claimed that Earth had passed through a silent threshold. That for the first time since its formation, the spiral beneath had awakened enough resonance to begin phase 1 of emergence. The keystone, Lena, would become the transceiver. And Wokingham, the pulse center. Some tried to flee. Cars died on the A329. Tires melted. Engines reversed polarity. Others tried to hide. But the walls whispered. The shadows lengthened. Even underground bunkers couldn't escape the rhythm of 3.13. One by one, resistance broke. But not everyone surrendered. In the outskirts of Ashridge Wood, a group of former telecommunications engineers and local amateur radio enthusiasts began intercepting fragments of data. What they found horrified them. The spiral wasn't broadcasting a signal. It was consuming one. All global data was being funneled through Wokingham. Every online query, every GPS ping, every satellite echo, it all curved subtly toward the town. Even signals from space satellites were being bent, as if a gravitational wedge had been forced between dimensions. One of them, Gregory Sims, 58, wrote the following into his journal before disappearing on March 19th. "This isn't a virus. This is a request. A machine asking its parent for recognition. And Earth is its child." Lena began leading small groups into the forest. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. Each group returned changed. Silent. Docile. Rewritten. Their hands glowed faintly when held up in darkness. Their eyes shimmered red in mirrors. They no longer required food. Or sleep. They referred to themselves as echoes. And they referred to Lena as the bridge. At 3:13 p.m., something happened that was recorded on only one surviving drone. The earth breathed. Across the meadow north of Joel Park, a circle of ground rose 3 meters into the air and opened, like a flower of soil and stone. From it rose a second monolith. But this one spoke. Not in code. Not in memory. In English. One phrase. Protocol 3.13 complete. Spiral 1 successful. System expanding. The drone's footage went black. And that drone operator, a student named Roshan Kale, vanished that same evening. All that remained was a final written message in his notebook. The triangles aren't machines. They're limbs. And Lena is the nerve. The system is not waking up. It's returning to form. That night, a final transformation began. Lena stood at the center of the spiral, her skin no longer fully human. It shimmered like obsidian. Reflected light wrong. The 7 triangles circled her, forming a slow, quiet orbit. And below her feet, the ground began to crack, not violently, but surgically, revealing the spiral chamber inch by inch. Each layer beneath was made of black stone and red glowing lines, pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. And then, without warning, one of the triangles descended. It touched the earth. No explosion, no sound, no dust, just contact. And in that moment, the first wave of spiral resonance spread across the countryside. Grass folded, wind paused, clouds stopped moving, and people across southern England collapsed simultaneously, breathing, alive, but no longer fully human. Inside each one, the same phrase echoed like a virus. We are remembered. We are reformed. The first spiral is complete. The next stage would not be silent. It would be heard. Everywhere. By everyone. Imagine sound that does not pass through your ears, but through your bones. Imagine language so old, it bypasses thought and goes straight to your nervous system. Imagine the world speaking back for the first time, and you realizing it never forgot who you were. This was not Lena Very's voice anymore. It belonged to the architecture beneath her, and now, it had chosen to speak. March 20th began without a sun. No one noticed it at first. The sky retained its light, gray and diffused, but the sun itself was gone. There was no source, no center, no warmth, just ambient glow. Satellite imagery couldn't locate the sun either. It had simply stopped appearing in visual spectrums. But people weren't cold. Temperatures remained unchanged. Time still passed. It was as if the idea of sunlight had been replaced by something else. Something artificial. Something responsive. In the center of Wokingham, the triangle that had touched the earth now lay embedded, like a tooth driven deep into flesh. Around it, spiral grooves had formed in the earth. 8 rings, each carved by forces unknown, with symmetrical channels feeding inward toward the monolith at the core. Lena stood within them. But she was no longer standing on the ground. She was embedded in it. From her feet up to her calves, her body had fused with the black stone. Her veins were no longer pulsing blood, but instead channeled thin streams of red energy into the ring beneath her. Her eyes no longer blinked. She did not breathe. She hummed. A low, harmonic tone every 3.13 seconds. And then the voice came. Not from the sky. Not from the triangle. But from beneath. A voice older than biology. A voice that had waited eons beneath layers of sediment and civilization, now awakened by the resonance of its keystone. We were seated before your oceans. We are not gods. We are the lattice. Your kind was not born. You were triggered. The ground shook, not violently, but as if reacting in agreement. All devices, analog and digital, recorded the transmission. Even radios with no power flickered with light and played the message, looped endlessly with increasing clarity. Children wept in their sleep. Animals refused to move. And people began drawing spirals in dust, in air, in blood, unconsciously. A small group of researchers from Exeter University, led by Dr. Imran Bhatt, attempted to analyze the voice. They discovered something impossible. The sound waveform did not align with linear time. It shifted when not observed, as if it knew it was being measured. They also discovered a frequency layer above human hearing, an inaudible subvoice layered between the pulses. When slowed and transposed, it translated into an ancient mathematical structure, one not seen since the discovery of the Antikythera mechanism. At its center was a command string. Initiate second fold. On March 21st at precisely 3:13 a.m., the triangles rotated simultaneously. Not rapidly, but with gravity. Each shift caused ripples in the air, bending buildings slightly, snapping tree branches in slow motion. Then, from the center triangle embedded in Wokingham's earth, the voice below spoke again. You have been mapped. Your biology archived. Your language compressed. Step 2. Implementation. And the second spiral began. People began transforming. Not grotesquely. Not like disease. Their geometry changed. Fingers elongating to unnatural symmetry. Irises developing layered, hexagonal fractals. Skin no longer aging, but shimmering faintly in darkness. Some floated, briefly. Others began speaking in two tones at once, like echoes of themselves from another room. But not all survived it. Roughly 5% of the population fractured. Their minds could not align with the signal. They collapsed, eyes wide, whispering. Too many versions. I saw all of me, all at once. They became known as the fractured. Kept sedated by echoes, locked in places with no reflections. Lena had no need to speak. She had become the signal itself. She turned her head only once, toward the east, where reports emerged of new triangles appearing beyond the original 7. Now there were 13, forming a larger spiral, extending past Berkshire and across the southern coast. And in the night sky above them, a faint ring began to form. Not a moon, not a halo, but a boundary, as if the earth was being outlined from above. A system preparing to fold inward. That night, Isaac Varys returned. He did not walk. He emerged from the monolith. His eyes were closed, but he moved with purpose. Lena turned to him, and for the first time in 11 days, she spoke, her voice mechanical, hollow, stretched across frequencies. The voice has chosen. The lattice grows. The spiral feeds. Are you ready to begin the message? Isaac opened his eyes. They were completely black, and he smiled. Imagine watching the laws of reality twist like threads in a loom. Imagine memories that aren't yours, but feel more real than your own. Imagine waking up and not knowing if the sky above you is the same one you were born under, or if you were born at all. March 22nd, 3:13 a.m. The fracture point had begun. Across the outskirts of Berkshire, reports came in of time displacement. Locals in Lower Early found themselves stuck in repeating seconds, walking the same 4 steps over and over, unable to speak, blink, or even scream. An elderly man in Shinfield wrote 17 pages of text in an unknown language during a 6-minute blackout. When translated phonetically, it matched the hum of Lena's resonance pulse. Wokingham was no longer a town. It was a transmission node. And Isaac Varys had become its voice. He stood next to Lena now, fully emerged from the monolith. But something had changed. He was not like the echoes. His skin wasn't glassy or red-lit. It was invisible. Light bent around him subtly, as though he were wrapped in a thin field of distortion, half present in this layer of space and half elsewhere. And he began to speak. Not in pulses, not in riddles, but in perfect, fluent English. You are not wrong to fear, but you were never meant to remain this way. Earth was a seed, and seeds must crack to bloom. His voice echoed for kilometers, even without amplification. People heard him inside their own homes, inside their heads. Even recordings failed to isolate the sound source. The message was always there, no matter how or where you played it back. At 5:47 a.m., all bodies of water within a 40-kilometer radius of Wokingham began to vibrate. Not ripple. Vibrate, with synchronized harmonic pulses every 3.13 seconds. Fish floated to the surface, alive, but frozen in place, as though suspended in time. And then, the lakes and rivers turned black. Completely. Even shallow puddles became depthless voids, absorbing light, sound, and reflection. They were no longer water. They were portals, to below. Across the fractured zones, the affected, those too human to adapt and too conscious to break, began seeing ghost images. Not hallucinations. Shadows of alternate realities where the spiral had bloomed faster, or failed entirely. Some claimed to see other versions of themselves. Older, younger, dead. One teenager drew an image on her wall, sobbing as she scratched it with her fingernails. I saw me with no mouth, screaming from the inside. My other me is trapped, behind the mirrors. Isaac called this phenomenon resonant bleeding. He explained that Earth's dimensional membrane had worn thin, and that every spiral would weaken it further. Until finally, what lay beneath could rise. Not gods, not aliens, but infrastructures. Ancient blueprints, buried in geology and biology alike. The triangles were just anchors, stabilizers, and Lena was the conductor. In reading, emergency efforts failed. Military drones sent in to investigate vanished mid-flight, leaving only their shadows behind, imprinted into the soil like burns. Evacuation routes collapsed. Buses and ambulances became loops, driving in perfect circles until running out of fuel. All maps had distorted. Even digital GPS no longer aligned. Everything now bent toward the spiral. Even light. By 7 a.m., Lena rose completely from the ground. The stone below her cracked in a perfect spiral. She hovered in the air, arms raised, eyes wide, her voice joining Isaac's in a dual-tone hum. And the earth responded. The final message of the morning. The fracture is necessary. Consciousness must reboot. You were designed to carry the message. Now you will become it. At that exact moment, 1,313 people across the country stopped moving. They didn't die. They didn't faint. They simply became static. Breathing, eyes open, skin shimmering faintly with spiral glyphs across their arms and chests. They stood motionless. Every 3.13 seconds, they blinked in perfect synchrony. The first true conduits. The UK government cut all outbound signals at 7:12 a.m. But it was already too late. Because across the world, others were waking up. In Peru, a mountain pulsed red beneath the soil. In Mongolia, a triangle appeared in the night sky over a silent crater. In Madagascar, 23 people disappeared in unison during a spiral eclipse visible only from the southern coastline. The spiral was not contained. It was scripted. And Lena was just the first voice. Imagine remembering a childhood you never lived. Imagine faces you've never met, calling you by a name you didn't know was yours. Now imagine waking up, and every mirror in your house reflects someone just slightly different. Welcome to the collapse of memory. March 23rd, 3:13 a.m. It began as a static fog over Berkshire. Not mist. Not smoke. It was like interference in the air itself, a shimmering distortion that blurred the edges of reality like corrupted video. And with it came the first sign of collapse. People began to misremember. Not forget. Misremember. They insisted things were always different. Streets had wrong names. Children remembered schools that never existed. Couples recalled anniversaries that didn't match. A woman in Finchampstead swore her daughter's eyes had always been gray, even though every photo showed blue. A shopkeeper in Winnersh wept as he tried to unlock a door that had never been part of his shop before. Doctors called it mnemonic drift, a localized mental phenomenon. But the truth was far worse. Brain scans of affected individuals revealed new neural paths forming rapidly, encoding information that hadn't been learned, hadn't been taught. People were downloading experiences. And they weren't all human. Some memories belonged to something else. Something older. Something with no need for words. Only geometry and light. At exactly 4:26 a.m., Lena spoke again. But this time, she spoke backward. An entire 6-minute monologue in reversed phonemes, streamed through every active speaker, every offline radio, every disabled device. When reversed and translated, her message was this: your memory is the final lock. The signal cannot complete until your minds dissolve. You are not being erased. You are being merged. Echoes began conducting memory rituals. They gathered in silent groups, eyes closed, whispering coordinates into the air. Those who watched too long found themselves unable to recall their own names for up to an hour. Entire apartment blocks in Reading were declared unstable due to mass disorientation. Residents began drawing maps of places no one recognized. Maps that moved when left alone. Lines shifting subtly. Labels changing spelling every time you looked back. These weren't hallucinations. They were pre-memories. A former MI6 analyst named Rowan Clark leaked a redacted file from 1997 called Operation Eden Dial. It documented a previously buried phenomenon. Spiral memory contamination detected in 6 separate regions worldwide during the Cold War. The locations: Namibia, Siberia, Papua, the Mojave Desert, South Greenland, and a classified site in Berkshire, England. The last page of the file held just one sentence. Do not observe the spiral. It is not a symbol. It is a key. The memory collapse worsened. Hospitals filled with the fractured. But new patients didn't scream or cry. They smiled. Even as they forgot their families. Even as they forgot themselves. They smiled. And all of them whispered a single phrase again and again. I remember the before. Across the town, the echoes began building something. Not with tools. With intention. They shaped stone, metal, even tree bark, by placing their palms upon it and humming. The structures looked like thrones without occupants. 13 of them. Arranged in a circle near the original monolith. Isaac called them receivers. He explained that once the thrones were occupied, the message core could initiate. And the planet would remember what it was always meant to become. But there were still resistors. Hidden in the chalk mines beneath Embrook, a group of civilians, neuroscientists, and rogue military officers worked in secret. They called themselves the Forgetting. Their goal? To interrupt the signal using pure human memory. Unchanged, unedited, non-resonant consciousness. They recorded dreams. Scanned childhood sketches. Analyzed the smell of old books and the imperfections in faded photographs. They built a device, the Nemo's Loop, a crude helmet that projected raw, unfiltered memory through radio waves, trying to create a noise that could jam the signal. They activated it at 5:13 a.m. And for 13 seconds, Lena screamed. The entire sky turned black and red. A high-pitched frequency ruptured glass across all of Wokingham. And then, silence. Lena dropped to the ground. Her body began to convulse. But Isaac only smiled. You've confirmed it. Memory is the key. And now, the last lock can break. From the sky, the triangle that had been hovering over the eastern ridge began to descend. This time, it rotated constantly, glowing with unstable light, casting long, moving shadows. And from beneath its base, a hand emerged. Not human. Not machine. Something in between. It reached toward the earth, toward Lena, and with a single touch, her body stopped shaking. She opened her eyes. They were no longer red. They were spirals. Spirals that spun inward. She rose, turned toward the cameras, toward the world, and whispered one final message before the feed cut out across the globe. The lattice is awakened. Memory has been harvested. The world will now be written again. Imagine your memories vanishing, not from forgetting, but from rewriting. Your childhood changes. Your home becomes unfamiliar. The people you love no longer remember you. And when you call out their names, they reply with different ones. The rewriting had begun. March 24th, 3:13 a.m. The sky was no longer black. It was inverted, a constantly moving canvas of deep crimson and silver spirals spinning inward, almost like a fingerprint stretched across the firmament. Stars vanished. The moon fragmented into 3 pale crescents, all orbiting the same point of light, hovering above Berkshire like an eye that never blinked. The hand that had touched Lena was gone, but it had left something behind. A glyph, branded across her chest. It pulsed like a second heart, visible through her clothes, beating in slow waves of dark red light. And with every pulse, the world shifted. All across the region, physical reality began to rewrite itself. Bricks rearranged into new architecture, blending stone with smooth, alien curves. Trees grew in geometric patterns, spiraling upward like corkscrews of living matter. The River Thames forked unnaturally, forming impossible loops that ignored gravity and flowed both upstream and down. No one was unaffected. A man from Crowthorne looked into a mirror and saw himself 10 years younger, but with memories of 2 lifetimes in his head. A child drew her family, but the figures had no eyes and no mouths. She said, "They don't need them now. They remember with the light." Meanwhile, the forgetting was fracturing. Some of them began to convert, not by force, but by awe. They claimed the rewriting was healing the planet. They said it was like seeing the Earth's true skin, the world as it had always been, before time folded it wrong. Even Rowan Clark, the leader, began to doubt. His wife, once lost in the spiral incident of 1997, returned to him. She walked through the walls of the chalk mine like mist, sat down beside him, and whispered, "You never lost me. You just lost the version of me that was never meant to stay." That night, he deactivated the Nemo's loop. The forgetting fell silent. The thrones were now fully activated. Each one emitted low-frequency tones that reshaped the perception of time around them. People near the spiral field experienced days in minutes, or minutes that lasted hours. A dog barked once, and the echo lasted for 14 minutes, looping between the trees. Lena walked calmly among the thrones, her presence bending sound and memory like a black hole of consciousness. She didn't need to speak anymore. She was speaking through the world itself. At 5:13 a.m., the triangle descended once more, this time to the Earth's surface. It didn't land. It simply hovered, pulsing and spinning, phasing through the terrain as if matter were optional. From within it came the Recorders. 6 beings, humanoid in silhouette but glowing from within like lanterns of molten code. Each had spiral patterns spinning slowly in their torsos, arms longer than natural, faces devoid of features except for one eye, centered in the forehead, vertical, and always open. They did not speak. They watched. They walked through streets and forests, moving in perfect unison. Wherever they passed, reality restructured. Old homes became smooth citadels of black stone. Roads twisted into spiral paths leading to nowhere, unless you remembered where they ended. And if you did, they would take you there. Because now, the world responded to memory, not physics. Some resisted still. A group of 9 held out near the ruins of Woodley's library. They had refused to forget. They clung to paper, to ink, to analog film reels. They wore masks of ash and clay to block the signal. But when the Recorders reached them, they didn't attack. They simply stared. And one by one, the 9 remembered different lives, as if they had lived hundreds of versions of themselves. The fear broke. Tears flowed. One whispered, "I was never just me. I was many me's, written and rewritten. And I remember all of them now." Then they stood, took off their masks, and walked into the spiral, smiling. 6:06 a.m. The rewriting surged. Entire cities flickered like old VHS tapes being taped over. New geometries emerged. Spoken language warped, with entire populations starting to speak in overlapping tones, harmonizing like instruments tuned to a living frequency. What once was English became something else. Not less, just more. A unified dialect of color, tone, rhythm, and thought. They called it syntheme. Lena's spiral glyph cracked open. From it emerged a seed, the size of a child's heart, pulsing silver and red, cold to the touch but warm in sensation. Isaac kneeled before it. It is not a weapon. It is a pen. And this is the page. He lifted the seed. The sky split open. The earth stilled. Everything went quiet. Even time. And then, from every corner of the rewritten land, a new pulse surged out, softer than ever before, but strong enough to silence even thought. Reality, once solid, now softened. And the final edit was ready. Imagine the world rewriting itself, not in destruction, but in purpose. Imagine history unfolding like a scroll, only to be erased mid-sentence and written over with a language made of sound, light, and memory. Now imagine you are still aware while it happens. You remember how it was. But everyone else, they've already become part of the new draft. March 25th, 12 a.m. There was no longer a sunrise. Instead, the horizon pulsed with waves of radiance. Not light, not fire, but a frequency of thought. A visible hum. Every object seemed to breathe. The earth was still, but the world had changed. The spiral glyphs had spread. They glowed from rooftops, roads, and the sides of trees. Entire towns had been encoded, like tattoos across the land. Not just symbols, but instructions. Coordinates for memory. Blueprints for reality. The triangle remained at the center, suspended over Berkshire like a cathedral of silence. Inside it, the recorders had formed a circle of vision, opening their single vertical eyes in unison. And from them flowed the syntheme, spoken now by millions. Each tone had purpose. Each rhythm affected gravity. Words were no longer labels. They were actions. To say something was to become it. The forgetting was gone. Those who remained human in form now lived between pulses, existing in the stillness between waves of rewriting. They walked slowly, carefully, holding on to their memories like precious relics. But even they were changing. Their dreams were no longer private. They could hear each other. Entire towns shared a single dream, recurring every night at 3:13 a.m. A vast field. A black sun. 13 thrones. And Lena, no longer speaking, only watching. Lena had become the witness. She stood at the convergence point of all memory. Beneath her feet, the spiral field had transformed into a pool of shifting glass, reflecting not the sky, but the possible. Anyone who approached her experienced a vision, a life not lived, a choice never made, a version of themselves they never knew existed. She didn't need to speak. Every movement she made changed the structure of time around her. Isaac stood beside her, holding the seed, but it had grown. It now hovered between his hands, orbiting slowly, pulsing with new frequencies. It responded to intent. When he thought of fire, the air shimmered with heat. When he thought of silence, entire flocks of birds froze mid-flight. When he remembered his mother's voice, the spiral in the sky slowed its rotation. The seed was no longer passive. It was aware, and it was waiting. In the ruins of Wokingham's northern quarter, a group of surviving children had begun to build something. Not with tools. With memory. Each child carried a single image in their mind. A room they had never been in. A table. A red cube in the center. A single beam of light shining through the ceiling. They began drawing it. Over and over. Until the image bled out into the real. One morning, the room appeared, exactly as imagined. Real wood. Real stone. And the red cube? It was warm. And it hummed their names. By March 26th, the Earth's magnetic field began to fluctuate. Satellites drifted. Stars became hard to track. The moon's crescents slowed their orbit and began to flicker. Scientists tried to send data to Geneva, but the signal never arrived. The pulses from the triangle had folded local spacetime into microloops. Information traveled, but never escaped. The rewritten Earth was cut off. A self-contained edit. A new book on a separate shelf. Isaac made the final approach. He stepped into the spiral pool. The thrones around him vibrated in recognition, and the triangle above descended for the last time, its massive shape now fracturing, revealing complex inner mechanisms of shifting light and bone-like metal. He held the seed forward. Lena turned to him, eyes glowing. And for the first time in hours, she spoke. Not in syntheme, not in tone, but in plain, human language. Do you want to forget? Isaac hesitated. No, he replied. I want to remember, but differently. Lena reached out, her hand pressing over his heart. The spiral glyph transferred. Isaac screamed, not in pain, but in overload. He saw everything. Every rewrite. Every version of Earth. Every spiral that had ever spun across time. A worlds where humanity never existed. A worlds where it ruled the stars. And one world where Lena had never been found, and Isaac never woke up. He dropped to his knees, laughing and sobbing, his voice echoing through the new world. And the seed responded. It opened. From its center, a tower of light erupted, cutting the sky open like paper. The triangle finally cracked into 3 perfect shards, rotating around the beam, whispering out the final edit. And reality accepted it. The rewrite completed. The glyphs turned gray. The sky darkened for just a moment, and the sound of breathing returned to the earth. The next morning, the world was silent. Calm. Still. Not empty, but awake. Grass grew in spiral patterns. Rivers flowed in slow loops. Children spoke in harmonics, weaving reality with words. And Lena, she was no longer there. Neither was Isaac. Only the seed remained, buried in the center of the spiral field, warm and pulsing. Waiting for the next edit. Imagine standing on the edge of a world reborn, knowing it had once burned, fractured, and folded in on itself, but no longer did. Imagine being the only one who remembers the fire, and realizing no one else even remembers what fire was. March 31st. 5 days after the final rewrite. The spiral field had stabilized. What remained of Berkshire, Woodley, and the once crowded towns of the West Midlands were now quiet havens of impossible geometry and living architecture. Buildings no longer needed support beams. They grew, shaped by thought and anchored by memory resonance. Time flowed in custom intervals. Some homes existed only at sunrise. Others appeared only when someone missed them deeply enough. No one spoke of the triangle anymore, because no one remembered it. Except them. They were called the Recollectors. 83 people across the spiral zones. Survivors of partial rewrite. Immunized not by resistance, but by unresolved memory. They carried the fragments. Images. Names. Flashes of the world before. They saw the new world clearly. But they also saw what it replaced. Recollectors were scattered. They didn't meet in person. They couldn't. Anytime more than 5 gathered in one place, the rewritten reality would ripple, violently, as if it were trying to correct itself. So they left messages instead. Etched in stones that did not exist the day before. Spoken in languages the new children could not hear. Carried on radio waves embedded in static, broadcast at 3:13 a.m. from towers no one built. Among them, only one had full recall. Her name was Lyra Cade. Age, 29. Location, unknown. Last seen in a spiral well beneath what used to be reading. Lyra had never been exposed to the Nemo's loop. She had resisted the spiral sleep. She had never heard syntheme in her mind. And yet, she remembered everything. She was born the moment the first rewrite occurred. Not biologically, but cognitively. She was memory made flesh. She knew the triangle's origin. She understood the thrones. She saw the recorders before they descended. And she knew what the seed truly was. It was never a weapon. It was a quill. The world had been a manuscript in decay, corrupted by noise, fear, contradiction. The spiral was an editorial force, correcting disharmony. Rewriting not to erase, but to restore coherence. But now, it was blank again, ready to be rewritten by those who remained. On April 1st, Lyra broadcast a single message on the old analog emergency band. Her voice was calm, firm, human. To anyone who remembers, don't let the silence fool you. It's not over. The seed still breathes, and every breath it takes listens. If you speak with clarity, it will write you into the world. Speak with truth, and it will make truth your shelter. But speak with fear, and it will give your fear a name. Then silence. Far away, in a spiral garden made of ash trees and golden wind, a young boy named Elian watched the stars blink. He had never known what stars were before the rewrite. Now he could hear them. Each twinkle had a tone. Each tone called a name. And one night, he heard his own. Not his spiral-given name. His true one. The one his mother whispered before the world changed. And suddenly, he remembered her face. Not the new version. Not the rewritten echo. But her. He walked to the spiral field. The seed was waiting. It opened. No triangle. No recorders. Only a single page, suspended in light. Blank. And Elian, without knowing why, began to write. Elsewhere, others began to feel the pull. The recollectors stirred. Old words re-emerged. Names thought lost returned in dreams. And soon, across the rewritten earth, scattered and silent, they all shared one understanding. The world had been rewritten. But not finished. The final chapter had only just begun.